here today. I'm honored to be in this beautiful building. The Asian American Resource Center is a wonderful building, and I definitely hope that you will join the mailing list and continue to stay involved. So today, I'd like to first give you a brief Zen and Taoist, I like to say Taoist, discussion and introduce you a little bit to the creative process that went into my book. So if you would like to join me, I'd like to lead us off in a Qigong meditation to center us in this moment. So the way that this works is basically you take in a very deep breath through your nose, and you hold it for as long as you can, and then you release it. And I will guide you through the meditation, but as you need to take a breath, please feel free to take one. So we'll do this 3 times, and basically just, again, ground ourselves in this moment. So if you will join me in taking a deep breath in, just breathe in peace, wellness, stillness. Breathe out any anxiety, worries. Just feel really calm in this moment. Just exhale deeply. Great, one more. Breathe in. And as you hold it, think of all the things that you're grateful for. I am so thankful for this quiet emptiness and stillness. And that's, I think, the traditional meditation that you often see when people are in the lotus pose and following their breath and just being very still in that moment. That is a very, very wonderful and healing practice of meditation. Active meditation is something that I don't think gets discussed very often, but I think of it as being when you're in the zone. And if you think of athletes, when they're playing, and Steph Curry, my favorite athletes right now, when he's hitting all of his threes, he's in a meditative state, right? He's really in the zone, and he's just thinking about what he has to do in the game. And that's a place that you can get to in any moment, just in your walking, in your breathing, as you're washing dishes, just bringing yourself back to the present moment is a meditative exercise. And it's something that is very healthy, and it brings you peace and stillness. And it's actually one of the ideas in my book is that just the question, considering the question, pulls you into the moment and allows you to live in that space. Very fancy here. So what inspired my book was Zen and Taoist philosophies, which I was very fortunate to be introduced to at a very young age, just by having a curious mind and doing a lot of reading. And no one slide could capture either one of these beautiful philosophies. And I think it's important to note that they can be combined with any spiritual practice. It is really just a way of being. And Zen, to me, is captured in this phrase, there's only now. So it's being firmly in the present and not living in the past that can bring you depression and ill feelings, or the future, which can bring you a lot of anxiety. It's just refocusing your energy very much into the present moment, and in that place, you can find great peace. And one of the stories that I like, Zen parables, that I really love is a story of 2 monks who were men and not permitted to touch women in their practice. And as they were walking along the road, they ran across a woman. It was raining outside, and she was wearing a beautiful kimono. And one of the monks helped her to cross over a very wet area. And so the monk put her on his back, carried her across, and the monks continued on. But one of the monks had a little bit of anxiety about the fact that the other monk had touched a woman. And so he said, why did you touch the woman? This is against our practice. And the first monk said, I left her on the other side of the bridge. Why are you still carrying her? And this story really captures how we can carry the past with us, and it's gone. So Zen really challenges us to be very present and be very mindful of everything we're doing. And I think it's just a very beautiful practice. Now, Taoism is a very beautiful practice. I'm fortunate to be friends with a Taoist monk who I see weekly and actually get acupuncture from. And I like the description that Osho, an Indian mystic, came up with for Tao, which is the pathless path. And Tao can mean path or the way. And really what I think of when I think of Taoism is balance and nature. And you're probably all familiar with the yin-yang symbol that is often associated with Taoism. And there's a thought that there's good within every bad, and there's continuous motion, and an ending is only a new beginning. All of these things really represent what yin and yang is, but to me it's just oneness. There's oneness, and there's harmony, and there's balance. And that's really what Taoism is about. It's being yourself and being uniquely you. And one sentence from the Tao Te Ching that kind of leapt into my mind when I was creating this slide at around 1 a.m. was, care about people's approval and you'll be their prisoner. So Taoism really challenges you to be yourself and to not be influenced by everything around you, but just to be in that stillness and in that zone that is just uniquely you. So I could really probably go on and on about both Zen and Taoism. They've been very influential for me and really helped to change my whole perception and my way of thinking, and in many ways to lift a veil just in terms of how I saw the world and how I see the world, and challenges me to continually bring myself in the moment, maintain balance, and be me. So I hope that you all can take something small away from that and maybe be encouraged to look into both a little bit more yourself. But next, I'd like to actually lead you in a meditative question. So hopefully you all have paper and pen from the front. If you don't, you can just raise your hand. We can get you pen and paper. We're going to do just a quick 2-minute exercise, a meditative question that's actually from the book. Is everyone sorted with pen and paper? Okay, so we have a couple of people in the front that need paper. So this question is actually, I think of it as a Zen koan that I just have always been very amazed by. And I ask myself this question many times. So it's, what would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? And this exercise is purely for you. You don't have to share what you write. It's intended to help you reflect deeply. So if you just reflect on that question and provide your insights about what you would attempt to do if you knew you could not fail, this moment is for you. So we'll take a minute for you to just write out your thoughts and your different ideas about what you would attempt to do. And if you have many different things, just ask you to circle one as we move forward. But please feel free to use this minute now to reflect and answer the question on your own. And actually, Bianca, if we could get a couple more pens for the front, that'd be great. Thank you. If you could raise your hand if you need pen or paper, just so we know. Okay, so we'll get a pen for Neva and for, oh, you have a pen now. Okay, so my cousin here. By the way, there's no pressure. My grandparents are here, my parents, cousins, aunts, uncles, sister, no big deal. So please do take some time and write out your answer. I have a lot of high school cronies here too, so no cheating on the question here. No, actually none of us ever did. We were all in the nerd club, right? So as you think about what you would attempt to do if you knew you could not fail, I then invite you to determine where you would start. If that dream, that idea that you have, what are some things you could do to start that today, right now, to prepare yourself for that? feel free to make it as detailed or as simple as you would like. Give you another half a minute to work through that. Great. Thank you. And this is definitely take-home work too. No pressure if you have additional thoughts. But this is the type of question that I asked myself a lot before I started on my journey to be a writer. My background is engineering and business, so very different from writing. And I worked in corporate America for over 10 years at a variety of companies, including Motorola and Google and Random House, and sort of landed in this writing space because I felt that I had something to share and something to hopefully help to inspire others. So in February of 2013, I started a blog, a website, selenasage.com. And I went back through my website because I've now written over 540 posts. So it's amazing how things build over time. But this was my first post. It was to start anywhere. There's a power that comes from starting something new. The key is to start anywhere. And I think I used this thinking to propel me forward as I continued to write and continued to explore how I might inspire through positive messages. And I cannot tell you how amazed I have been of the reception that I've received from my website. I've gotten emails from a woman in Saudi Arabia who found my website and said she couldn't sleep and read my site and was really inspired, and it really made a difference for her. I've gotten emails from people in Africa and Europe and all around the world that have found my blog somehow. And honestly, I thought I was just writing for myself and my mother, because my mom is a very big supporter of my blog. And oftentimes when we talk on the phone, she quotes some of my posts, so I thought we were the only two reading it. But apparently, Google has made it very accessible, and that was a very wonderful experience, just to have communication from people around the world that found my blog and found some inspiration. So in terms of starting anywhere, and trying to decide how to do the story, I thought, why not include a picture of young me? This is me. And you can see I've always been very spiritual. That's me with the good book there. Was raised Catholic and holding the Bible there. I think I was reciting some Bible verses. And I think, I think about myself at that age, and when you think of when you're younger, there are just endless possibilities. You can decide to be a firefighter and then go do it. And I think somewhere along the line, as we get older, we feel our options are limited and that there are things that we cannot do. And one of the big teachings in Taoism is that to be more like a child is where you find a lot of healing and liberation. So Dr. Wu, who's the Taoist monk that I study with, has actually prescribed crawling across the floor as a way to bring health, and that gets you back into a state of mind of a toddler. And so Taoism brings in these different aspects of reconnecting with your youth that I think really opens you up to the possibilities that you feel you have at that age, that as we get older we sometimes feel more limited. So this is a picture of me in Tokyo where I started my book, and I didn't know at the time that the insight that I had with this beautiful cherry blossom tree, that it would result in a book. And I had to do the traditional Japanese tourist pose, according to my photographer, who is a Japanese woman, lovely. And what I noticed about this cherry blossom tree is that it was really an oasis for people all around the city. And this picture captures some of the activity of people taking pictures by the tree, having lunch, just meeting. I was there by this cherry blossom tree for almost an hour and was amazed by all the activity in the very busy city of Tokyo. And that led to the question that is actually at the start of my book: how might you be more like this tree? And the idea behind it was really how it promotes such calmness and stillness in the midst of the busyness all around in Tokyo. So I compiled a collage of a few pictures that I took across the journey that I was on when I wrote this book. So I was actually in Malaysia for a business trip, and also Tokyo. I had meetings as well. And I had some opportunity to travel around the cities and visit some art galleries, meet my friend in Singapore, Ringo, who wanted to have a picture to show his family of an American tourist, who he thought was Rihanna, but that's okay. And Bali. And Bali is actually where all of the ideas of creating a book came together. I was taking journal writings throughout all of the cities that I was traveling in, and when I looked up in Bali, I had a journal full of all of these questions that I'd been channeling throughout my 2-week journey. And this was my hotel room, which I found some pictures because when I arrived in Bali, it was Nyepe, which is their New Year. And it's a quiet day. You cannot go out in the city. You can't even leave your hotel. So I planned to go, sightseeing and all kinds of activities, and I found out I couldn't. I had to stay on property. So that time was actually a very beautiful time because I typed out my entire book during that one day. And the next day, I was doing all of the touristy things and visiting the monkeys. And that was the day I'd actually finished my book. So in one day, I typed it out and decided that I wanted to create a time-bound reflection of my trip and only use those questions that came to me during that journey. And the resulting process looks very simple from this slide, but I worked with graphic designers to take the questions and create the book that you see today with the colors and... that was a long cry. With the colors and the cover, which is actually taken in Bali by a professional photographer, and I knew that was the cover. I loved it. It was very powerful and dynamic and beautiful, which is how I think of meditation. And the process below, I had the books printed in Hong Kong, so I had to get them shipped and cleared through customs to actually get them. That's in the storage locker at the kind mover who unpacked the boxes, 2,000 books that I ordered. And the process, amazingly, from start to finish was 6 months, actually while I was still working full-time. So it was a very exciting, amazing process that reflected a lot of changes and a lot of design decisions that I got to create. I started a publishing company to publish it myself. So the entire process was really just very organic and a true reflection of what I wanted the book to represent for others, to hopefully inspire them. And I've had 2 events so far in LA, and amazingly, I've had a lot of therapists that have come to my book signing events, which is not an application that I envisioned for the book, but they've been using my book with their patients. And one therapist shared with me that she has her patient create a journal for every visit that starts with a question that they select from my book. And that's a way that they use to promote a different level of awareness and reflection within their clients. So it's been amazing, the reception that I received for the book, and I'm just so thankful to have this opportunity to hopefully inspire others and really introduce a different way of thinking. So to give you an example of a page of the book, and I'll actually provide some insight behind the question, and then we can open it up for Q&A. So this question, is the wave a part of the ocean? Was taken across the street from where I live in Redondo Beach. And I think of waves as unique creations that are all still part of one ocean. And in that way, I consider this question to be a bit of a reflection of humanity, that we are all different waves, but we're still part of the same ocean, and we're still connected, but we are able to reflect different things and share different gifts to the world, and so we are unique but still part of one whole. So this question to me is really the deeper meaning to it is it lies in oneness and connectedness of all things, and that there really is no separation except what we perceive. So looking at the cover, I'll make one last remark, because it's come up a lot in my book. People are surprised that there are no pictures inside, and actually I had the opportunity to share my book with Deepak Chopra, and my people are currently getting my book to Oprah's people, so that's on the horizon. I was fortunate to meet her earlier this year in February. And one of the questions that I get in the book is, why are there no pictures inside? And it's very empty. And why the colors? So I'll address that as a way to kick off the Q&A. For the question about pictures, I considered that because my blog is very image-focused, so there are a lot of images and messages. But for a book, I felt that the image would really direct your thinking about a question, and colors open the space for you and evoke different emotions that allow you to create your own meaning from every question. So the intention was to keep it very, very free. And there's a thing in Taoism that emptiness is what we use. And a bowl is often used as an example. So you fashion a bowl out of clay, but the emptiness inside is what you use. So when you have space to really reflect and think through a question, it allows you to utilize the emptiness that is within the book to provide your own meditative reflection. So, that's the story, that's the journey. Very condensed version, but definitely want to leave time for questions and, of course, pictures and signing. So thank you so much for your attention, for being here today, and I invite you to ask any questions that you might have about the process of either creating, designing, publishing, printing a book, or anything that you like, just questions that you had when you looked through the book.
Yes.
Okay, so what we'll do, for the sake of sound, we'll pass the microphone back to you, and I'll answer using this mic. Yeah?
Thank you. I was interested just in terms of this creative process. My impression was that this book, The Meditative Questions, was an extension of your blog. And I was interested in knowing what sort of feedback you've gotten from your regular readers since you published the book.
Thank you, Mr. Edel. Happens to be my father. So it's a great question, and my blog, I think, helped me to define what my core beliefs are, and writing, I think, does that. As you write, you start to understand what you think and what you believe. And so I think of the book, Meditative Questions, as a very concentrated version of my book. My blog. And instead of providing the answers, which I do in my blog, which it's a lot more extensive discussion of things, the questions allow the reader to develop their own answers. And the unique thing that I think comes from that is that as you change, the book changes. So I encourage you to consider actually keeping a journal as you work through questions in the book, because if you look at them 6 months to a year later, your answers might be quite different. And so to answer your question, Mr. Edelin, the blog, I think, again, it helped me to understand these core beliefs and themes that kept cropping up in the writing that I was doing, which, if you've not seen the blog yet, it spans from discussion of expectations to perception to peace, all types of different topics. And the book hits those areas from a different angle, and it's very open and allows for interpretation by the reader. Yeah, thank you.
Were you always kind of involved with like being meditative, or was it like kind of like more recently that you like discovered it?
Great question, Natalia. I think meditation was something that I tried a lot of different ways. So sitting and being quiet and in stillness was not something that came to me right away. My mind was very active, and my meditative practice was not, necessarily, there's no such thing as a bad thing or bad meditative practice, but it wasn't as focused and as still. So I went through a course of different explorations, and I took actually a course called Spiritual Exercises at a sort of a non-denominational facility in Los Angeles where I live. And this course was a different approach to meditation, which really had a really profound influence on me. And it was basically you take a piece of paper before you meditate and you write down everything that comes to your mind. And you keep writing. Any thoughts or to-do lists or worries or anything that's coming to your mind, you write down on this tablet. And you start and you focus on your breathing with any kind of mantra, Om, or anything that speaks to you. And if you get interrupted, you again stop and you write down any thoughts that are interrupting you. And you get to a certain place where you have this quietness and you hear a voice. And in this spiritual exercises course, it was saying, this is the voice of God that is talking to you in this moment. And it was something that helped me to expand my understanding and definition of meditation beyond just a quiet stillness to thinking of it as a conversation. And I think that evolved into me thinking about active meditation, where you're intensely involved in an activity, is another form of meditation. So to answer your question, I think it started many years ago and it's just evolved over time, and I think it will continue to evolve. But the practice has definitely been something that I've tried, for a long time.
Do you envision future books?
Thank you, Camille. How rare is it that you know everyone in the audience by name? So I definitely envision future books. The process of creation of any art, I think, is organic. And I had in mind to write a book in 2013, but it just happened all at once in 2 weeks in 2015. So I think what I learned from the creative process is that you have to be patient with it. And if you kind of start with a vision, and as it grows and develops, the art comes on its own. And so when I think about future books, I think it's something that will just present itself to me, and it's not something I plan on rushing or forcing, but I definitely envision that in the future. And maybe you can write a book too, and I can publish it. Great. Other questions? Anything's fair game. Oh, great. Lots of hands. So, two here and one in the back. Lovely. Bianca will help with that.
Are the meditative questions arranged in any particular manner? Are they progressive, or are they just scattered?
Thank you, Dr. Delco. The questions are actually arranged in the way that I wrote them in my journal writings throughout the travels. So I've had people tell me that they've read different countries. The book is divided into the country where I wrote the question, and they have a particular feeling or vibe from those questions. And interestingly, one of my colleagues said, what was going on in Malaysia? I think there's, you were really going through something in Malaysia. I was like, I was in meetings for 8 hours a day, so that might have influenced some of the questions, but they were really based on the experiences that I had in those places. And there's really no particular order outside of that.
I'm reading Last Bee Game by Herman Hesse right now. Meditation is a big theme in Hesse's work, as is its kind of connection back to the world. So it's always a question of, is there a point at which meditation becomes a retreat from the world as opposed to, say, an alembic for the self? Is that something you see as a problem with meditation? Is it something you see as a real dichotomy? In other words, the pain of the world is ubiquitous in many regards, and much of it can't be resolved. What's the point at which resolving your own peaceful interior agitations becomes beyond every power, a somewhat meaningless retreat?
That's a great question. Herman Hesse is one of my favorites. Siddhartha was, excellent book. The way that I view meditation is that you start as a practice where you're retreating from the world, perhaps, and you're going within yourself. But what I found is that as you progress in the practice, you start living your meditation. So as I, kind of described the active meditation, I came to see the acts of just washing your hands or washing dishes, walking, having a conversation, being fully focused and fully present in that conversation as a meditative practice. And it's not something that necessarily requires you to retreat into that quiet space. And there are actually many monks that meditate, in construction zones, right? So in the world, and not necessarily in that quiet space that we've, I think, come to associate with meditation. And my belief is that as you change, the world changes. So when you are lifting the veil from yourself and experiencing life in a different way, the world around you changes. And I think you see less good, bad, and you see more opportunity for a greater spiritual awakening where the illusions of separation by gender, race, any other characterization, religion, that starts to fall away, and you can embrace the world with more love and help to embrace healing. And one of my personal volunteer activities is with homeless children who've experienced so much. And through them, I think it's helped me to see, even just kind of guiding them through meditations, even that in those moments, they find a different life and a different peace, and they're able to bring that peace into the world, which is a beautiful thing. So my view of meditation, to get back to your original question, is something that evolves into a practice that changes the world. And I think we had a question from Stephanie in the back. Thank you, Nick.
You want me to wait for the microphone, or are you good?
I think we'll wait for the microphone just for the sake of the videographer. You have a very good voice.
So, question.
Yes.
When you go through your different meditative activities, do you find that they've changed and evolved? And when you do said meditative activities, do you find that that actually brings you closer to people who are doing those same activities? For example, whenever people do endurance sports, it's a big thing because you're surrounded by other people who are doing that same ridiculous amount of distance.
Like you and your bike riding and
I
triathlon?
have no idea what you're talking about. but out of curiosity, what are some of the events that you've found meditative?
It's a very interesting question because I see it on a few different levels. I think that when you start any particular practice, like tends to attract like, and those people they kind of find you or you find them. And when I started my blog, I had, all of a sudden different people that were interested in learning about meditation, and I was referring them to my blog posts about that. So it is interesting how that happens, and that energy can definitely attract other similar energy. And as far as activities outside of meditation, I think with when I think about my friend base and the things that we do, biking on the ocean or activities like that, there are some commonalities that we see with the world, and we have these deep talks, and we feed off of each other. So I think we're helping each other to grow into our full potential, and I think tends to be what happens, right? As you're going on your century bike ride, there are other people that are encouraging you. It's like 5 more miles, you can do it. And it's really good to have a circle around you that is supportive and loving, because it encourages you when things get difficult. And even with my book, it's very easy to talk about it. It's like 6-month process, super easy. But there were a lot of times where there were mistakes in the book that I found just before printing and was freaking out. And I was like, okay, get back to Zen, get back to Zen. Yeah, so there are moments that you go through in life where things are going like this when you think they should go like this. And having a supportive circle around you, I think, helps to propel you forward and encourage you, and that's a wonderful thing. And I'm so fortunate to have such a loving family and wonderful friends that I think have been a big influence in my life. One more question here.
Do you have a daily routine that you do to start off your day or end your day, or just during your daily activities to center yourself or just get in touch with yourself?
That's a great question, because I will tell you, I try. It's like, okay, this morning I'm going to get up, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go, do these to-do list activities. And what I find is that my best days are when I take time in the morning for a good meditative moment, doing the Qigong exercise that I led you through. The advice just from my Taoist monk is that if you do that activity 10 times in the morning and 10 times at night, it really helps to facilitate clear thinking and calm and stillness. So I definitely, even if I'm laying in bed, I try to start my day with that activity and end my day with that activity. But in the middle, I find that I just sort of, I'm a little bit like a leaf in the wind, and I just kind of do what needs to be done. And speaking of that, when I first studied Taoism, there's a lot of, in the writings, it's like, do nothing. Do nothing. And I was looking at that, I was like, what does that mean? Should I just go live by the ocean and do nothing? And what I came to understand that as is that you only have one decision to make at a time. So as you make that one decision, you need to make, you're doing everything that needs to be done without extra. And so that focus on whatever you need to do, I think, is what allows you to share your gifts and achieve what you feel you need to achieve. It's just through that focus of one thing at a time, one step at a time. Thank you, Layla. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, I think we have the mic coming to you, actually.
I may be the only one in the room you don't know.
Yes, I was going to say Santa Claus, but I don't know.
Okay, I'm not the only one in the room you don't know.
Okay.
You don't need to.
So you came incognito without the red, so you're throwing us off.
That's right, I'm losing.
Yes.
Sarah, this is Sarah and I'm Tom. Now you know everybody.
Perfect. Hi, Sarah and Tom.
I have a friend who's a minister, and she talks about when the subject turns to Sabbath, taking time off, getting centered, all that sort of thing. And she talks about Sabbath not only as days in a week, nor even as periods in a life like a sabbatical, but she talks about Sabbath moments. She talks about a deliberate decision, a clear-headed, deliberate decision to stop for 60 seconds and take a Sabbath. And she says that for her, it's not a question of length, but a question of commitment. Whether it's for a day or for 60 seconds or a breath, it serves great purpose in calling a timeout, so to speak, in which you recenter. Something that's all you get time for.
Yes.
So I just wanted to raise that as a question for you. Is there a experience similar to that for you as you go through busy days? And you were saying, get back to Zen, get back to Zen. But I sense that was a bit of a joke at the moment, but I wonder if indeed that's more than a lighthearted reference to a very serious practice.
It's a wonderful observation, and it's correct. I call them meditative moments, and sometimes it's just taking a breath, and I believe that you can change your life in one moment. And so often we think of ourselves by the stories that we tell ourselves of who we are based on experience and life, but the reality to me, and this is I think the beauty of Zen, is that life is now, life is in this moment. And as we recenter ourselves to that recognition, we understand that we can start over at any time and create the life that we want to have in that moment. So Qigong, really, to me, it represents breath. Life is breath. And so that practice of holding your breath, what I find, and hopefully you find as you try this, is that you start really focusing on the heartbeat that you feel all around your body, and that's your life. And if you don't take that new breath, that could be the end of your life, right? And so it's a very, it's a sneaky practice because it helps to remind you that that's all there is, that's all you have, it's just that breath. And so when you take those meditative moments, or as your friend calls them, Sabbath moments, I think it helps to remind you that life is right now. It's all now. And Zen, I think, plays with time a bit. And Deepak, when I had the fortune of meeting him and hearing him talk, he was discussing it as a human creation, time. And as if we think of ourselves as this collection of experiences, we're really trapped by that. Whereas Zen really encourages you to break free from all of that and open yourself to a new life, a new purpose. And in taking a simple breath, you can completely refocus your energy and move from what may have become a moment of anger to a moment of peace, or what may have been a moment of decision that you felt you needed to make, that taking that extra breath in that extra moment, you kind of center yourself to prepare yourself to make that decision. Those are all very, very wise, I think, things to do, because so often we can get caught in the waves, so to speak, and be moved along a path that we've not even considered or thought about. So in taking a breath and taking that time to reflect, we really change our whole experience with life. So I definitely have those moments, and I think they are transformational, and they remind me that this is all there is, this moment. This is it. Additional questions? Mother dear? Oh, we have one in the back.
Yeah, I had a quick question about your decision to start a publishing company.
Yes.
There's different ways of self-publishing, so I was just curious about how you came to that decision and how long of the 6 months did that take you, I suppose, and what is your vision for that part of this journey?
Thank you for the question. I kind of threw that in there really quickly, but it is sort of an exclamation point. I started a publishing company. And it's really because I had a vision for what I wanted my book to be, and I never considered going to a publishing company and trying to get approval for it. So the process to start it is just like starting any business. So it requires lots of paperwork and setting up bank accounts and all of that type of thing. So I'd say the process to actually start the publishing company took maybe a couple of weeks in April when I got back from my trip. And to your second question about the vision for it, I'll be honest that I just had this intention to create the publishing company for my own books. But an interesting thing has happened through this very short 2-month process that I've been a writer. And 2 women have actually approached me after events that I've had in LA about publishing their books. So it opens a door to help bring other people's creativity, and I'm in conversation with them on how they might create a work of art, whether I publish it or not. And it's opened a door that I hadn't expected to be open so soon, being a new author and new publisher. But this is the way things work. And there's a Zen saying, leap and the net will appear. And I think I leaped, and the net just continues to appear. And I have a lot of gratitude for that. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. Thank you. You had a question in the front from my lovely mother. Thank you so much, Bianca. I feel like you've been a... Yes, lovely.
So what do you feel has been your biggest challenge? And what advice would you give to people that may be considering writing or seeking the opportunity to express themselves or thoughts that they might have or visions that they might have, in terms of the exercise that you had us to do a few minutes ago?
That's a great question. Thank you, Mother, who brought me into this world. Who sometimes reminded me she could take me out, so. Just kidding. So your first question about my greatest challenge, I think it was probably sort of in the early part of my journey as a writer and my decision to create a blog, not really knowing what I was doing, you just kind of just do it. And I had this vision of a book, but I had no concept of what the book was going to be about or what it was going to look like. And I think as a creative person, that was really challenging for me, wanting to write a book, but I would start different books and just decide the next day, no, this is not it. This is too prescriptive. I feel like I'm telling people what to do. No. So my journey at the start was a series of just kind of writing out books that I didn't really finish because I didn't feel they were the right direction, so to speak. Not that there's a wrong direction, but it was challenging for me to find something that I felt was kind of worthy, I guess, of putting out into the world. And starting the blog was really helpful for me because I didn't want to be a writer who did not write. And I suggest if you're a painter that doesn't paint, or an artist that doesn't create art, to just start to create something. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. One of my new friends in LA that came to one of my events is a comic book artist, and he has a calendar that just has a day of the week and an empty page, and he draws a different comic every day of whatever comes to mind. It's not something that's necessarily going to be published, but it keeps that, it keeps that fire, it keeps that energy of creation going. And I think my blog served that purpose for me. It helped me to keep the energy going, and so my advice to others would be to just start whatever it is you think you want to do, and try to challenge yourself to do a little bit of that every day, because that practice of creating is very, very strong, and habits will be formed. And if I might say, my grandmother swims a mile every morning. And I think the practice of swimming every morning becomes a habit, and then it becomes part of who you are. And so my writing, when I was writing, every day on my blog, it helped me to kind of become that person that I, could only envision. So that'd be my advice.
And if you would also explain the rationale behind Selena Sage and the symbolism that you
Oh, sure. Yeah, good question. And perhaps a loaded question. So the sage is actually from you. When I was about 8 years old, my mother asked me, what is the meaning of life? And my 8-year-old self answered, to give life meaning. And she, at the time, said, wow, my little sage. And then later, at our high school graduation, I don't know, Jaguars, if you remember this, my mother started her speech with, a wise sage once said, the meaning of life is to give life meaning. And so I adopted Sage as a bit of a pen name, and was using it for emails, and it just sort of caught on, I think, with my writing, and it seemed to fit the genre that I was writing about. So that's where the name came from. And the symbol was something that I created. It's actually a combination of two symbols. The outer ring is Zen Inso, which can mean a lot of things. It can mean the universe, your body, just any creation, connection. And to me, it just sort of represents everything. And the three horizontal lines in the middle are actually the Taoist trigram for heaven. So when I combined the symbol, to me it represented heaven lies within, and that's the meaning behind the symbol. And it's interesting because I was having a conversation with a Christian person, and I said, in fact, if you think about the symbol, it very much mirrors Luke, book of Luke. I believe it's chapters 17, verse 20, where Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God lies within. And so that, that connection I thought was really interesting, because we were having a conversation and I was just telling her that there's not too much distance from, I think, a lot of what Zen discusses and a lot of what other religions bring up is just that connectedness and that understanding that we are all, divine emanations of the Creator. And in that awareness, I think, comes the understanding that anything is possible. So that symbol means a lot to me, because it's a reminder that any limitations you feel are really self-imposed. And when you move beyond those self-imposed limitations, you start doing wild things like starting publishing companies and writing books and having a wonderful room of people that are gracious enough